Today marks the anniversary of the night my life almost ended, and the world kept spinning like nothing happened. I've never really told this story in full, not like this, so I'm sharing it with you. I was riding in the front seat with my brother and his best friend, half scrolling on my phone, half laughing at something stupid, when the world suddenly exploded. Not metaphorically. Literally. A deafening crash, a sound like metal tearing open the sky, followed by a scream that sounded animal, desperate, raw. It took a second to realize that scream was coming from me. My head felt like it had been split open. My shoulder burned like it had been ripped from my body. I tried to move my arm, nothing. It was dead weight. The car was still moving. Glass was everywhere, in my hair, on my clothes, in my eyes. I blinked through pain and blood and somehow forced my eyes open. That's when I saw it. A massive hole in the windshield. Right in front of me. Later I would learn the truth. A stranger had dropped a huge rock from an overpass onto traffic below. No warning. No reason. No mercy. And of all the cars on that road, it landed on ours. That rock was meant for my head. The only reason I survived is because I had turned slightly to the left, playing Pokémon Go of all things. The rock hit the side of my head instead, then bounced down onto my shoulder. Inches. That's all that stood between survival and instant death. As the shock set in, I realized something terrifying. I might not have much time. So I called 911. Then I called my husband. My voice was shaking, but I tried to sound calm. I told him what happened. I told him I loved him. I told him I might not make it. He made me promise something strange. Something beautiful. That if I survived, I would still dance in the rain with him someday. Promise. My brother pulled off the highway, and the ambulance met us at the exit. By then, my body had started shaking violently. Everyone thought I was having a seizure, but later they said it was shock. My body was shutting down. The ambulance doors opened. EMTs rushed in. Red and blue lights flashed above me like a distorted dream. And then I saw my husband's face. He didn't look panicked. He didn't look afraid. He looked calm, loving, steady, like he was trying to be strong for both of us. I smiled at him, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. Focused on staying awake, on staying alive, on not letting my eyes close for too long. I thought about my best friend, the one I'd shared almost a decade of my life with. I thought about my parents. I thought about everything I'd never get to say if this was it. Because glass shards were embedded in my neck, the EMTs couldn't put a brace on me. My neck didn't hurt, so I did something surreal. I stabilized my own head, sat up, and laid myself onto the stretcher. My husband stood beside me in silence. I told him everything would be okay. Those might have been my last words. As they loaded me into the ambulance, a state trooper started taking photos of my injuries. My shoulder was already swelling, bruising, deforming. Evidence. Documentation. But even then I knew. The person who did this would probably never be caught. And I was right. Once I was strapped in, my husband climbed into the passenger seat of the ambulance. I asked him to call my parents. My mom didn't answer. So he called my father. He answered, annoyed. When I explained what happened, his response wasn't fear. It wasn't concern. It wasn't love. It was inconvenience. It's late, he said. We have to wake up early. We can't talk right now. I told him there might not be a tomorrow. Only then did he reluctantly pass the phone to my mother, who complained about being in bed and not wanting to get up. I told her everything. Then I lied. I told her I'd be okay. I asked her to look at the photos of the scene and my injuries. She said her phone was charging in the bathroom. She didn't want to get up. When she finally did, her reaction was nothing. Like I had told her I scraped my knee. Okay, she said. I'm going back to sleep. Rest up. And just like that I realized something. If I died tonight, very few people would notice. And the people who should care the most, didn't. But what happened next, inside that hospital, showed me just how alone a person can be while still surrounded by people. When we arrived at the emergency room, it was overflowing with patients. They wheeled me in without even putting a mask on me. Not that it mattered much. In my mind I was already dying. They placed me in a bed. And then, nothing. 4 hours. No one washed the glass out of my eyes. No one checked on me after the scans. No one spoke to me. No one explained anything. My body felt like it had been run over by a truck, reversed over and crushed again. 3 hours passed. Finally, after CT scans and X-rays, someone came in. Not with answers, not with comfort, but with Tylenol. I think I actually laughed. I couldn't believe that after everything, the rock, the shock, the blood, the trauma, I was being treated like I had a mild headache. My husband stayed beside me the entire time, calmly talking, holding my hand, trying to keep me grounded. And that's when it hit me. This was my life in one snapshot. I was lying in a hospital bed, convinced I was dying, and my husband was the only person truly there. I had never felt so alone. After the scans, I called my best friend, the one who lived 5 minutes from the hospital. I told him what happened. He freaked out. He asked if I wanted him to come. What kind of question is that? Course I did. Said yes. He said he didn't have money for a ride, so I offered to call him one. An hour passed. Nothing. My husband texted him. He replied, "I'm just getting in the shower." That message hit me harder than the rock had. Somehow, the test results came back. No broken bones. No brain damage. No internal bleeding. To the outside world, this was a miracle. Blessing. A lucky escape. But I wasn't happy. Not even a little. All I had to show for it were massive bruises, torn tissue, and pain that would linger. But inside, mentally, something far worse had happened. Before this night, I already lived with severe PTSD, chronic illness, and years of suicidal ideation. I had survived things no one should ever have to survive. I had already tried and failed to take my own life once before. And now I had survived something that should have killed me. I wasn't grateful. I was bitter. I knew I would have to carry this moment for the rest of my life. Everyone else would tell it as a shocking story. Something dramatic, something temporary. But for me it wasn't a story. It was a scar inside my brain. A memory that would replay every time I closed my eyes. A fear that would follow me everywhere. As I was discharged, I texted my best friend not to bother coming anymore. I was going home. The next 2 weeks were a blur. I stayed in bed in the dark, sleeping most of the time, crying when I was awake. I tried to turn my pain into action. I made a petition. I tried to raise awareness. I begged the city to install safety nets on overpasses. Anything, because this wasn't rare. Over 200 similar attacks had happened that summer alone. It went nowhere. Instead, I was mocked. Strangers online laughed at me, dismissed me, told me I was exaggerating. I did one news interview, then another, then a radio interview. My story spread, and with it the cruelty. One man commented that he was tired of hearing about women with trauma. He accused me of self-diagnosing PTSD, even though I was professionally diagnosed years ago. He told me I was soft, that I needed to get over it. People questioned whether my story was real. People stopped me on the street to say, "It doesn't look like your head was hit that hard." Even my brother's girlfriend asked if I was sure I'd actually been hit. "Why did it affect you so much?" she asked. "All you got was a bruise." Hundreds of people told me how lucky I was. Lucky. Out of millions of cars, mine was chosen. Out of all places on my body, the rock landed on my head. And they called me lucky. No one understands how infuriating it is to be told you're lucky after surviving violence. No one understands how cruel it feels when people mean well, and yet their words cut you anyway. And you're expected to smile, thank them, to be grateful, to shut up. But the emotional fallout didn't stop there, because the people closest to me started unraveling too. My husband, my high school sweetheart, my caregiver, my anchor, held everything together for months. He didn't cry in front of me. He didn't complain. He didn't fall apart. He stayed strong for me. But strength has a breaking point. About 5 months after the incident, he finally collapsed under the weight of it all. He broke down completely for a couple of weeks. He tried so hard not to make it about himself, but this trauma wasn't just mine. He had raced to meet the ambulance that night because he thought he was about to see me alive for the last time. That kind of fear doesn't leave you. In the 2 weeks after the attack, I barely ate. One day I managed a few bites of meat, and that was it. One meal in 2 weeks. I felt that if I left my bed, I wouldn't be safe. And that fear never fully left. To this day, when I leave the house, I expect something violent to happen. Every loud noise, every sudden movement, every overpass, every car. My world shrank. Meanwhile, my best friend, the one who didn't show up, couldn't give me a real reason why. But later I found out the truth. His addiction had taken over, and I cut him out of my life for good. That wasn't the end of it, though. Months later, he stayed at my house to help, while I was preparing to be hospitalized for my eating disorder. Instead, he stole hundreds of dollars, weed, and alcohol from my husband and me, to fuel his addiction. That was the final straw. I was done. Then there were my parents. They never called to ask how I was after the incident. Not once. Months later, my mother called, furious, because I wouldn't fly across the country on one day's notice to help her put her dog down. She was angry at me. I lost it. I told her she hadn't come to my state when I was dying in a hospital bed. That she had no right to be upset with me for not being able to afford a $600 plane ticket while I was barely surviving. She told me it was my fault. She said she and my father didn't react properly because I sounded calm on the phone and played it down. So we went no contact for months. Later, she was diagnosed with a disease that affected her reasoning. She eventually apologized, and I let her back into my life. But the damage was already done. After almost losing my life, I lost my best friend. I lost my parents for a while. And emotionally, I lost my brother too. When I told him that I felt like the reality of what happened was going to hit me the next day and that I would probably be sad, he looked confused. "I don't understand why you'd be sad," he said. "If it were me, it wouldn't really affect me." There was nothing I could say to that. Some people simply don't have the capacity to understand trauma. So I stopped trying. The next year of my life was a nightmare. My eating disorder spiraled out of control. I relived the moment over and over again. Anytime something fell in the kitchen, anytime I heard glass break, anytime there was a loud noise. Every time I got into a car. Every time I saw a car. Every time I drove under an overpass. Took me months to get back on the freeway. Even now, when I leave my island to go into the city, I have to pass directly under the bridge where I almost died. There was no justice. The person who tried to kill me was never caught. Life went on. And I was left alone with the hell inside my head. My husband became my entire support system. Don't ask me how therapy went. That's another story for another day. On the outside, I look fine. Healthy. Happy. Lucky. Beautiful. There's no visible damage. Just some internal scarring in my shoulder that no one can see. I look like a success story. A miracle. A survivor. But inside, I carry the weight of that night every single day. Today, I told my mother that I was sad because it was the anniversary of the day I almost lost my life. She looked at me and said, "It's not an anniversary. It's not something worth remembering. But what if the day you almost died is the day you finally realized how little the world cares, and how much your survival actually costs?" People think survival is the happy ending. It's not. Survival is the beginning of a different kind of suffering. One that doesn't show up on X-rays, CT scans, or medical charts. The night that rock hit my head, something inside me shattered in a way that couldn't be stitched back together. And the hardest part isn't the memory itself. It's how invisible the aftermath is. 'Cause I look fine. Smile. Function. I walk around looking like any other healthy, lucky woman. And that's exactly why no one takes the damage seriously. People see survival as a gift. But they don't see the cost. They don't see the fear that grips me every time I get in a car. They don't see the way my heart races when I hear a loud noise.